Fathers of Reddit, what did your daughter's boyfriend do for you to hate love him? My father-in-law was really touchy around me. And you could see he wasn't really sure about the interloper in his daughter's life. I took him to a baseball game. And we got along alright. But he was still edgy. Afterwards, we were talking in his office when I noticed he had an Eagle Scout badge framed. I asked him what he did for his Eagle project. And we started talking. And I mentioned I was also an Eagle Scout. You could see his whole idea of me change almost instantly. He put in his Christmas letter that he approved of me dating his daughter. And we're now married with 2 kids and a 3rd on the way. That is the most American story ever. Asked my friend's father this question. Firstly, my daughter. I'd say my GF father likes me. The first time I met him I was driving over to pick up my GF to go to the movies. I roll into the driveway and the garage door was open and inside was a 1969 Mustang. Parts strewn everywhere and a oil covered, greasy, and thoroughly pissed off man underneath said car. He was trying to get something and bolted but was struggling to hold the part and operate the ratchet at the same time. I made note of said struggle and jumped underneath to help him. I figured I would give him a hand. Then get up and meet my girlfriend and head out. But we ended up getting along pretty well and I had lost track of time and before I knew it 2 hours had passed. During this time, my girlfriend came out to find me working with her dad underneath this car and she just let it be and brought us some sandwiches and sweet tea. She was more than happy to skip the movie date because she saw I was enjoying myself and her dad was enjoying the help. I'm gonna marry this girl and hopefully one day that car will become ours. He threw sand on her in recess and pulled her hair once. I was not impressed. This one girl used to tease me back in grade school. We were in each other's classes every year and our names were close alphabetically so we were usually placed next to each other. All the other kids knew about our thing. Which was really just her giving me a hard time. But when you're kids, pulling hair is a marriage proposal. But one day, when she was telling me to stop moving my chair or some shit, she threw up. It was super casual. Like a burp that dreamed of being something bigger and just kind of fell out of her. So she's staring at this puddle on her desk like what do I do now and I'm staring between her and the flecks of bile on my body like what? The teacher finally noticed and took her to the nurse. But after that day she gave up the teasing. We didn't get married. Not a father. But my dad absolutely adores my boyfriend. Purely because whenever we have a fight or he pisses me off, I never badmouth him to my dad. Therefore, he has never done wrong in my dad's eyes. Also, he calls me out on my sass, which my dad enjoys greatly. The boy did chores without being asked. Hard to hate a boy who does the chores. My daughter's boyfriend would help with the chores without being asked, but quit his job to play video games all day while my daughter went to school and worked. Let her pay for everything. Lied about interviews for jobs. Always had excuses about why he couldn't work at each place. In front of us he played up the polite young man. So glad they broke up. He said she wasn't supportive enough. Really? She paid his phone bill, fed him, drove him around. Asshole. Growing up, I didn't learn about fixing household things or using tools in general. Thanks dad. One time my girlfriend's father was working on fixing a washing machine. I offered to help him to demonstrate my value. He gave me the job of keeping track of screws and tools. After a few minutes, he asked me for Phillips screwdriver. I did not know what that meant and didn't want to seem useless. So, I started looking at the labels of each screwdriver to hopefully find Phillips label on one. Seeing that, he leaned forward and took it himself while giving me that look. I think the man lost respect for me ever since. PS. First thing I did coming home was to look up what the heck that meant. It turns out it just means crocheted, plus, screwdriver. He's 26 and my daughter is 18. I don't like that. But he fashioned me a wooden desk and painted my office. That I like. When I was in high school and the hot girls were dating much older guys. I remember thinking that it was super weird. Now that I'm out of college and in that age group, the thought of dating someone that much younger than me is still super weird. Yeah, it's crazy to me too. Even as a sophomore in college, seniors in high school seem super young to me. I think being 32 and dating a 24-year-old is significantly different than being 18 and dating a 26-year-old. You gain a lot of maturity in those few years, ya dig? Asked my dad if he ever hated any of my exes and why. He told me one of my exes would always order the most expensive thing on the menu when we all went out to eat and my dad was paying. My dad and mom turned it into a betting game after a while of which of the two most expensive dishes will my ex order. Edit. Pro tip to people now worried about what their so's parents now think. Order something that you'd like to eat and would pay for yourself. If it's something on the pricier side, offer to pay your own bill. Not a father, but I apparently won my father-in-law over by listening to him. His family is all girls, 3 daughters plus wife, and apparently he was a verbally abusive alcoholic when he was younger, since reformed. Doesn't even drink during special occasions. So they all basically treat him like he doesn't exist because they resent him so much. Anyways, during one of our first meetings he mentioned that he really liked Age of Empires II. So, for Christmas that year I gifted him, through GOG.com, a copy of Empire Earth. He teared up when he realized that I'd remembered what his favorite PC game was. Girlfriend in question here, the two of them climbed Mount Doom together. As an only child, my parents have always been cool with me bringing friends on holiday with me. We were going to New Zealand for a week when I was 19. So my so came with us. Even though it wasn't long after we started dating. My dad is a really athletic type. My mother and I really aren't. So normally on family holidays, dad would be off mountain climbing and bike riding and stuff like that on his own. He always encouraged me to go with him. But it wasn't really my thing. But my so is really athletic, so on this occasion, they went climbing up one of the local mountains, which some of the Mount Doom scenes were filmed on. They got on really well together and my dad really liked having the company of someone who enjoyed it as much as he did. Well, my daughter is 4, 1/2 and her boyfriend Henry James is the son of my best friend from college. We moved across the country when they did so we could raise our kids together. He and I are both mariners so a commute of 3,000 miles isn't significant. The first time Henry met her, she was 3 and he was 2, 1/2 and he unbuttoned her shirt in the back with little tiny buttons that took me forever to button up. Just a couple days ago, he pulled the smoothest line I ever heard when he said, "I have a new flashlight. Let's turn out the lights." I let that go, but about 15 minutes later I heard all kinds of commotion coming from his bedroom and went to investigate. They were both in the bed. A little kid bed with a guardrail so he couldn't fall out. And they were chasing each other around and around. In a dark room. With my little girl. I'm not going to say I like the little dude. But I respect that. I was 17 before I got a pretty girl in my bed in the dark. And now I think I ought to go clean my shotgun. He bought me scotch for my birthday after dating her for only a couple of months. Now I'll explain why that's good. It showed that he had already realized family is important to my daughter. That birthdays are important in our family. And that scotch was something that would be appreciated. That suggested he cared about what she cared about. They're married now and I'm happy about that. He gave my wife something similarly nice the next month for her birthday. But since it wasn't scotch I can't remember what he did. My father-in-law and I get along great and he has told me many times the reason why he liked me when he met me. I was 17 when I went to pick up his daughter to go to a concert as friends. I was all excited to see Green Day and Blink 182. This was 2000 roughly. I ran up his front lawn, did a front flip and shook his hand and introduced myself. He said despite being a clown, I made it a point to show respect and shake his hand. Turned to his wife and said he could tell I was going to be around a long time. Been together ever since. I very tentatively asked my dad the other day if he liked my boyfriend. My dad is one sarcastic man. And it's hard to tell when he's serious. Anyway, he eventually admitted that yes, he does like my boyfriend even if he is a bit scatterbrained. I said I don't care about scatterbrained. I care that he treats me right. Listens to me. Takes an interest in my hobbies. Loves me. Appreciates the things I do for him. Never puts me down. Cares for my family. Cares for my pets. Encourages me. Believes in me and picks me up when I'm feeling down. My dad just said, yeah, he's fine I guess. Started taking care of oil changes for her car. I knew he was a keeper. My dad would always tell me you should really try to meet new people at school. You never know if you might find someone better suited for you. Then one day my boyfriend approached him about working with my dad landscaping for a summer. My boyfriend proved himself to be the strongest worker and now my dad calls him his right hand man. Also, my boyfriend bought my dad Fallout 3. Now they are inseparable. And my boyfriend and I have been together for 5 years. Edit, my boyfriend's dad passed away when he was 11 so it's really nice to see him be so close with my dad. Even if I am the third wheel. P. My dad is a very large, bearded and slightly scary looking man to the untrained eye, of course. He is a big cuddly bear to us kids. Well, my wonderful boyfriend would have been forgiven for being nervous, until he mentioned the computers he had to deal with in work. My dad's eyes lit up. They began chatting and debating about the best to use etc. Then the topic got on to Star Wars and Star Trek, also on how I leave my hair in the shower drain. And leave dishes to soak and sometimes forget about them. Yup. They bonded over their mutual love of all that is nerdy. As well as my ditziness. My daughter was entering grad school and her boyfriend was headed to basic training 2 states away. 2 months later she returned from a visit wearing an engagement ring. At the end of training his first assignment was to a place quite far away. He encouraged her to stay in school and finish rather than dropping out to join him. Short-term pain. Long-term gain. He flew home at Christmas for a simple courthouse wedding. Then when she graduated the service paid for her move to join him. Cause the spouse gets benefits but not the fiancé. End result, approaching 5-year anniversary and trying for baby 1. I couldn't be happier for her. I was the boyfriend my ex was from a super conservative, NRA card carrying upper middle class white family. So when she brought home a poor Mexican they weren't sure about me. I won them over with nerdiness. But more interesting is how I won over her grandparents. They were more than a little bit racist, heard some casual use of the word nig, so I assumed they were a lost cause. Well, they had some apple trees in the backyard. And eventually the yard just ends up full of rotting apples on the ground. I spent a day picking all the apples up and throwing them put. Hundreds of pounds of apples. All while being harassed by bees. After they saw how hard I was willing to work, I was welcome. At the moment the most awesome thing he has done is not exist. I love that guy. My dad is really sarcastic and picks on my boyfriend anytime he's around. I finally asked him one day if he actually hates him or what. And he said, of course I like him. I pick on him all the time. How could I know what to tease him about if I didn't know anything about him? If I actually didn't like him, I wouldn't bother even speaking to him. Being mean is good. Being indifferent isn't. Not a father, but a son-in-law. Wife was a bit of a partier smoker in college, which was rough as her family had a history of alcoholism. When we got together, I let her know it was a dangerous path she was on with that history, and asked her for us to tone down the drinking and smoking. This really set in with her from me vs anyone else telling her the same thing. When I talked with her dad on a trip to the airport and asked for her hand, he got teary-eyed. This coming from a staff SGT who served 2 tours in Iraq and was not the emotional guy, and told me he saw her change right when we got together. Made me feel good, validated part of the family. The moment I met my son-in-law I liked him. He was smart. educated and a real gentleman. He opens the car doors for my daughter and he treats her with a lot of respect. He saves his money and doesn't spend frivolously, and best of all, they never ask for a dime. He's a keeper. Oh, and because I had 3 daughters, it is nice to finally call someone son. Me and my girlfriend's father don't speak the same language. Literally. Whenever we're left alone together, we just do the awkward smiling and nodding thing. But one Saturday I helped him lay a ducking ton of patio stones in his back garden, and now he sometimes sends me baked goods. Nailed it. Hate story. I decided to be a good boyfriend and brought pink roses, my GF's favorite color, when I picked GF up for our date. She loved them. Put them in a vase and left the vase on the kitchen counter. We went out. When I dropped her off, slightly before curfew because I really wanted her parents to trust me. Her dad was cooler than being cool, which is to say, ice cold, to me. Couldn't figure out why. I'd done everything by the book. Skedaddled as quickly as I could. Because whatever I had done was clearly the wrong move. She called me 30 minutes later to explain. GF's mom had come home, saw the roses, and assumed they were a gift from dad. Was so happy because he never does stuff like that for her. And it was so sweet and romantic. He came home. She thanked him for the thoughtful gesture. He said what? A fight ensued. So basically I got put in the house for blowing up dad's spot and ruining his evening. All because I wanted to be a good guy. My fiance's father doesn't speak English and I don't speak Spanish. The first evening I met him, we started communicating through a series of hand signals, grunts and such. Based on this charade style communication, it was clear that the women in the family drive him crazy. They catch on and start lecturing him in Spanish. I give him a nod and start the tequila shots. We get pretty drunk and end up dancing with each other to something called bachata. Yeah, we're good friends now. My dad adores my husband. Why? Because he sat down and watched TV with them the very first day while I was getting ready. A little context. My ex-boyfriend before meeting my husband had no gonads. We were together for 4 years. And he was still terrified of my dad. Whenever he came over, he stayed over most weekends. I had the basement apartment. He would say a quick hi in passing and run downstairs. For 4 years. So when my future hubby came over, they immediately liked him because he didn't run. My dad is a scary looking dude.